Real Madrid is a football club so large that no longer can its location be described as just within the Spanish capital city. From St. Petersburg to Patagonia, Canberra to Castelo Branco, Los Merengues may be situated in Madrid, but in reality the club are everywhere. With an estimated 400 million fans worldwide, they're the most supported team not only in world football but sports overall, with a fan base and culture built pretty much entirely off of one thing: success. 35 La Liga titles, 14 Champions Leagues, another 18 international and domestic trophy wins. No club has ever won like Real have, being the only team to ever win the European Cup 5 times in a row, and have even won it more times in the last 10 years alone than all but 4 teams in the entire competition's near 100-year-old history. And of course, with iconic success comes the iconic players who are behind it, with the likes of Ronaldo, Raul, Casillas, Beckham, Figo, Puskas, Ramos, Di Stefano and so many more, all playing for Los Blancos over the years. However, arguably none of these players were as important to the club's 21st century success as Zinedine Zidane, who in a spell of just 14 years would win the Champions League for them as both a player and a manager. However, 21 years after the Frenchman's first European success with Los Merengues, a new man who wasn't even alive to see Zizou's success dons his iconic number 5 shirts. This is the truly remarkable rise of Jude Bellingham. On the 29th of June 2003, just over a year after Zidane's famous volley against Leverkusen, Jude Bellingham was born in a relatively small town called Stourbridge on the outskirts of Birmingham. Despite growing up in an area seemingly mundane on the face of things, Bellingham's superstar potential perhaps should have been more noticeable from the start when you take a look at his father Mark, who despite working full-time as a police officer was also able to manage a footballing career that lasted 25 years where he'd score over 700 goals in the lower English divisions. That being said, Jude Bellingham himself has said that as a child he wasn't really interested in playing football at all, preferring to play with the grass on the pitch instead of focusing on the games around him at football sessions his dad would take him to, until one day at the age of 6 it clicked and the boy from Birmingham became obsessed with the beautiful game. Bellingham had joined Birmingham City's academy at age 7, playing with the under-18 team by 14, the under-23s by 15, and even started training with the senior side a few weeks before his 16th birthday, where it had become pretty clear to anyone involved at the club that this boy was special. In 2019, he became the Blues' youngest ever player. A couple weeks later, he would then become their youngest scorer of back-to-back winners and relegation 6-pointers, and by January, the club were worried that they were already going to lose him, with huge offers coming in from the likes of Man United, who were desperate to sign the midfielder, sending in a bid of a reported £30 million before he'd even turned 17. Now, a massively hyped English teenager is certainly far from uncommon. We've seen it time and time again, with as many of them failing to match expectations as the ones that do. But what sets Jude Bellingham apart from even the most successful of these teen sensations was his critical thinking, not only on the pitch but also off of it. Instead of falling into the whirlwind of money and attention that comes with the move to the Premier League, Jude Bellingham had the maturity aged just 16 to understand his best option was to see the season out with his boyhood club, before making a move to a team well known for taking exciting wonder kids and turning them into world beaters.
For me, I think it's the perfect club right now in this point in my development.
On the 20th of July 2020, less than a month after the conclusion of the Bundesliga season, Jude Bellingham would arrive in Germany to seal a £25 million move, making him the most expensive 17-year-old of all time, with his number 22 even being retired by Birmingham City following the move. Now, at the time, this was laughed and ridiculed by many, as you'd imagine, but what's often not brought up is the fact that the club had been in a terrible financial situation before Bellingham came through, and the £25 million move not only saved the club from potentially getting relegated or even going bust, but it also reportedly included a sizable sell-on clause which, as we now know, would give them another cash injection just a few years later. As well as this, the number 22 itself was pretty unique to Bellingham too, as when in the academy he'd become a master of pretty much any position in midfield, starring as a holding midfielder, attacking midfielder or a mix of the two. And so one day Jude's coach suggested adding the 3 numbers together, of course equaling the number 22. And so with that being said, it's clear to see that not only did the club love Jude Bellingham, but Jude Bellingham also loved the club, and despite only being there for a season, he'd managed to break through and become a legend in the West Midlands, a theme that would perhaps foreshadow what was about to come in his time at the Westballon Stadium. Bellingham made his Dortmund debut aged 17 years and 77 days old in the DFB Pokal on the 14th of September 2020. 30 minutes in, and he was officially the club's youngest ever goalscorer in any competitive competition before another 5 days later he made his league debut in the first Bundesliga game of the season, getting an assist 35 minutes in and playing a key role in a 3-0 win against Borussia Mönchengladbach. By the end of the season, he'd played 43 games, scored in the Champions League knockouts, Bundesliga and DFB Pokal, a tournament he would start every game in as Dortmund won it for just the third time in 32 years. And most importantly, he'd impressed Gareth Southgate enough for him to be selected for the Euros that summer, making 3 appearances in England's run to the final. To summarise that really quickly, in just 2 years, he'd gone from being a completely unknown teenager from the West Midlands to a household name across the globe, key starter and major tournament winner for one of the biggest clubs in Europe, and had made his debut for his national team in a major tournament all before the age of 18. And of course, his rise would only get crazier after Jadon Sancho's big money move to Man United meant the Englishman had a much larger responsibility further up the pitch for the upcoming season, something it turns out he would thrive off of. In the 21-22 season, Jude Bellingham's goal contributions tripled, his touches per 90 increased from 48.9 to 66.7, and his leadership ability continued to blossom, shown perfectly in his performance against Bayern in November, where despite losing 3-2, Bellingham would assist both goals and was generally just incredible, sticking out in a game which featured the likes of Erling Haaland, Robert Lewandowski, Marco Reus, Leroy Sané and so on. The fact is, as each season went by, Jude Bellingham got better and better and more complete, and after Erling Haaland departed in the summer, Jude Bellingham was now undeniably the biggest name in Dortmund's squad going into the 22-23 season. And surprise surprise, he was far from a letdown. By the World Cup in November, he'd already scored 9 times and assisted another couple, but most importantly continued his development as a leader by becoming the club's youngest ever captain by the start of October. And of course, having impressed so much already, it would actually be more surprising if he didn't continue to perform at the world's biggest competition, scoring the opening goal of England's tournament, starting all 5 matches for the Three Lions and consistently being one of the best players on the pitch. Of course, we all know now that England unfortunately wouldn't bring it home, however this disappointment may have just pushed Bellingham to the next level, as once German football returned he was even better than ever before. 4 goal contributions in the first 4 games after the restart would ignite an incredible run of form for Dortmund, seeing them rise from 7th place to the top of the league with just a game remaining, before devastatingly an injury sidelined the Englishman for the final game, watching from the bench as Dortmund let it slip, drawing 2-2 to Mainz and handing the title to Bayern Munich in truly dramatic fashion. From Bellingham's reaction after the game, it was clear it was going to be his last chance to win the league with the club, as for years Europe's elite had been circling him, and after another season which saw him develop into one of the most complete players in the continent, he had finally outgrown the side. As we know, with each transfer, Bellingham's taken a huge step forwards, initially from Birmingham to Dortmund, and this summer from Dortmund to Real Madrid. With Zidane's number on his back and a €100 million fee on his shoulders, the pressure on Jude Bellingham to perform was bigger than ever before, having signed for the biggest club in the world. Making it even worse, last season had been a somewhat underwhelming one for Los Blancos, failing to win either the League or Champions League, having lifted them both in 21-22, and so it's massively important for them to get off to a bright start to keep up with an ever-improving Barcelona. Unsurprisingly, Bellingham made his Real Madrid debut on the first game of the season, scoring the second in a 2-0 win against Athletic Bilbao, showing the millions of Madristas watching just what he was about, and things only improved from there. Just 3 minutes into the second game of the season, Real found themselves 1 goal down to Almeria before Jude Bellingham scored twice and assisted once in a 3-1 win, before following that up with another winner in their 3rd game of the season against Celta Vigo, putting the club top of the league before his first game at the Bernabeu in the 4th match week. Things didn't exactly go perfectly though, as deep into added time the score was level with the game destined to be a draw. But then Jude Bellingham did it again.
Lucas with a shot. Sorry, I spilled it. Bellingham scored. He's done it again. He's scored in all 4 of Real Madrid's first games of the season.
4 games, 4 wins, 5 goals and 1 assist. Not only is Jude Bellingham proving himself as the best player in a team featuring the likes of Modric, Kroos, Camavinga, Tchouaméni and Valverde in midfield alone, but he might even be the best player in the entire league. And a reminder for all of you, he's only 20 years old. If Real Madrid need a player to drop deep and help him build up, they've got Bellingham. If they need one to help recycle possession and set the tempo of a game, they've got Bellingham. If they need someone to help them win duels and switch momentum in a minute, they've got Bellingham. Pretty much anything they could ever ask for, Jude Bellingham is the solution, and to an elite standard. The fact is, Zinedine Zidane was a truly unbelievable footballer and probably even one of the top 3 in Real Madrid's history, but in a few years' time, he might not even have been the best one to have worn the number 5. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jude Bellingham.